Never quit. Never quit. What if that's all I said this week? I just walk up and turn off the camera and say, that's it, never quit. Why do we need more than that? Why aren't those words enough? Be yourself. Why isn't that good enough? It needs something more, right? It needs energy or some kind of drive or purpose behind it. I think it needs story. When we add story to words like that or advice like that, it gives it some kind of roots. And story is probably, I think it is, the most ancient way to teach and to learn. And there's a great story behind Never Quit. I was in grade 12, just finished grade 12, heading into my life. I was working out of town on an acreage, building an enclosure for some animals, and I asked my dad to help me. Now, my dad spent many years as a carpenter. At that time, he wasn't a carpenter anymore. He was in sales, but he had lots of carpentry experience. So I called him out to help me, and we began to construct and frame this enclosure for an animal, nailing in nails into wood. And right at this time was a very, just lots of, not conflict in our family, but lots of indecisiveness and turmoil, because we were all kind of wondering what to do with the next stage in our lives. Both my sister and I were ready to leave the house. In fact, my sister, was going off across the nation to school, into another nation actually. She was going to leave Canada and go to school in the States. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, and my parents were also thinking about moving to the States where my dad was from. He's an American, my mom was a Canadian, or is a Canadian, and so we were raised our whole lives in Canada. And right at this time, my dad, he was in sales, and it was a very difficult job where every month he started at zero and had to sell enough to meet a quota. And so at the start of every month, it's kind of like, you're at the bottom of this huge mountain, right? So it was a hard job, stressful job, could be rewarding, but lots of difficulty. And so right at this time, my dad had another job offer to stay right where he was, a better job, but in the same industry of sales, or he could completely move with my mom. And they wanted me to go to a whole nother nation, to the United States, and start a whole new life down there. And so all of this is going on as we're out there building. And at one point, I look over, and lots of times when you're working and getting into the groove of work, you start thinking, and I think that's what my dad was doing, because he was working really hard and really fast, and he was pounding these nails into this board with almost no effort. And I asked him, how do you do it? And he said, Brian, I look at the head of the nail. I never take my eye off of it. And I start swinging. And he began to show me, and he had several nails in his hand, and he would tap one nail just so it stood up straight in the board, and with one blow he would drive it in, or two blows, and he began to pound these nails in one fluid motion, and he would yell out, I never quit, I never quit, I never quit. And these words just burn into me, and this emotion and this rage. He wasn't mad at me, he was just full of rage at the world and all of, I think, the indecisiveness, and I don't know what to do, and the family's kind of being torn apart. And all of this was coming out in this one moment. Never quit. And I think it's probably, the most memorable advice that my dad's ever given me. Even if he didn't mean it to happen, it did. And he never did quit. They did move down to the States, and they have a very wonderful time down there, and they love being down there. And he works hard, and he still inspires me by his work ethic. And so that's kind of his story, is to never quit, and it really did shape me. It's a really powerful story. I'm sure you have stories, and some of them maybe for you are like a raw wound, and just thinking about this story almost makes you bleed. And others of you have these stories that are champion stories of overcoming adversity and having courage, and almost like you need an award just for surviving this story. And both of them are so necessary. And I think what we need to do with these stories that we have is capture them. Otherwise, they're just wisps in our brain, or memories that easily come and go. But if we can capture them and physically hold on to them, I think it's so powerful. There's this one famous movie director and actor at one point, this is maybe 5 years ago now, I'm not even going to tell you who it is, but he said some horrible things about another ethnicity, racist, another culture. He just said some really ugly, hateful, hurtful things, and people were outraged and wanted him to be punished. And then it came out that he was drunk when he said it. And so it's like, slap on the wrist, that's it. But had he written it down on paper, physically taken time and care to craft these words, and this is what I really mean and feel, somehow getting words on paper just means a lot more. And so I think we should do that with our stories. Capture them physically. Either write them, and I would use a pencil. I love using a pencil because I'll write my story and I'm like, no, that's not what happened. My brain wants it to happen that way. I want to remember it that way, but it's really not what happened. And so I erase it and write down the truth. And that process of capturing that story, either in writing or make a painting maybe, or sculpt something, do something so it's physically in your hands, I think it turns into some kind of a contract. I talked a little bit about this in a previous video I made called Regret, where you're bringing memories into reality, and so you can hold on to it. And once you've captured this story, you get to decide what to do with it. You know, maybe you want to put it in your wallet and take it with you wherever you go, or put it on the shelf like it is an award, a trophy of what you've overcome. Maybe you need to share it. You know, maybe somebody else needs to learn from this. Somebody younger than you needs to hear and read this story and learn from it, and it makes their life better. Or maybe it's not time to share it. You want to, but you're not ready. That person's not ready, and so you need to hold on to it for a while. Or maybe you just need to burn it and just be done with it. I think we all have stories, and they're a powerful teaching tool, I think, for us. And you know, some of your stories might be evil in your mind. It doesn't make you evil. And some of your stories might be incredibly good, and it doesn't automatically make you good. It's what we do with our stories and how we live them out, how we treat other people because of the stories that have shaped us. I think that's where the real power of story is. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you more next week.